Welcome to the Hexagon Studio. This is Marjolaine Fournier. I'm part of the NAC Orchestra, and I'm sitting here with Jean-Jacques Van Vlasla, and today we're going to talk about the first symphonies and compare the first symphonies of Schumann and Brahms. And now I have to say that usually when we prepare the season of podcasts, Jean-Jacques proposes some titles and we pick, and then I take the title and we don't discuss it that much. And I just go for it. So this was, Jean-Jacques, this was a wild goose chase.
It was a naughty one, yes.
Oh, comparing the two symphonies, I found almost nothing in common, and I was desperate to find where you were going with this. And in my heart, right now, I feel so much relief because finally you're going to tell us what ties, besides the beautiful relationship, the beautiful triangle there was between the Schumanns, Clara, Robert, and with Brahms. But here we go, please. Tell me about...
Well, we will have to start by putting, things in context, which I always try to do, so that our listeners and our, onlookers know where we're going and from where we're coming.
Yes.
And where did they come from? Well, Robert Schumann was born in 1810. He's one of that group of composers that just explode in the beginning of the century. Yeah. Mendelssohn in 1809, Schumann and Chopin in 1810, Franz Liszt in 1811, Wagner in 1813, and Verdi also in 1813. Just
what
an
a decade,
extraordinary decade. Yeah. In a couple of years, suddenly something happened. And Schumann, 1810. The other person that is very important in this triangular family relationship, I call it, is Clara Wieck. And Clara Wieck was younger. She was 9 years younger than her husband. That's why her father didn't want her to get married to him. And he didn't think Robert Schumann was important enough to marry his extraordinary daughter, and he
wasn't wrong.
He was a father, and in 19th century, and he had prepared this young lady to become one of the most extraordinary pianists, and perhaps one of the most important pianists of the 19th century.
I need to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Clara Schumann, soloist. Everybody wanted her in their city to play. How many women soloists like that were there?
There were none.
She was unusual.
I mean, she was surrounded by the great top pianists, male pianists around Franz Liszt and company.
And soloists, violinists, cellists, all that.
They were all men. And suddenly there is this extraordinary young woman who also will bear 8 children to Schumann, and who will be the propagandist of his music, who will help him get through all his downfalls and upfalls, whatever. I mean, she's an extraordinary personality, and she composes.
That's
and
true.
She composes
Beautifully. Beautiful thing.
And as long as Robert Schumann, I always say this, as long as Robert Schumann could put the theme, the Clara theme, into his works, he was fine. The day he couldn't do it anymore, he tried to suicide. And it's an extraordinary thing. His internal clock, his internal music went together with the presence of this wonderful lady. And this wonderful lady was also a wonderful lady for Johannes Brahms. But Brahms was another problem, because Brahms had a totally different education, and I think the education is an important element in what we are going to say. The Schumanns were Schumann came from a very, very intellectual family, a very literate family. He had to become. He could have chosen between poetry and he wrote poems, in any case, and between poetry and music, he was so gifted, and the whole family was rather very, very intellectual. And on the other hand, you have Brahms, and Brahms comes from a totally different way. And Brahms, 1833, because I want to insist on that, who is 23 years younger than Schumann. Well, Brahms comes from his father is an innkeeper. Innkeepers, alcoholic, and a double bass player. That must interest you.
You put those two in the same sentence?
I'm so sorry about that.
You're not entirely off. Yeah.
And so, this young man to earn some money had to go into some of the coffee places or other places along the waterfront in Hamburg. And now, for those that know a little bit Hamburg, know that the waterfront has to do also with bordellos, and the word bordello comes from Bordelot, on the waterfront. And
really?
Oh yes, absolutely. So and then it bordello was on the waterfront, and that's why I use the word waterfront for those that understood it. So anyhow, we get he's a young teenager. He's a young teenager. He's 14, 15 when he started playing piano. Very gifted musician. At 8, he invented his own musical signals, his own musical symbols to express what sounded within him already at that point. So he's going to be a composer, certainly. And his father, the musical part was minimal, but there you go. Miracles happen. And he goes through, as a teenager, he goes through some difficult moments. They put him at the countryside, but then when he comes back, he has to go back to the same place. And so his relationship to the environment is nail hard. It's very tough. He's a nice young blonde. He's not tall. He's 5'3", 1.60 m, 1.60 m. He's not very tall.
Brahms was 5'3".
Yeah, 5'3". Isn't that an extraordinary thing? One always see this big bearded man, but this big bearded man, that heavy weight, loving his beers, loving his sausages, loving his cigars. Yeah. This is an image for later, and I think it's a false image of what we have of Brahms. When Brahms meets on the 30th of September, yes, the Schumann family, at the recommendation of Joseph Joachim, the greatest violin of the 19th century, for whom Schumann writes a violin concerto, for whom Brahms writes a violin concerto, who is in the midst of it, who is a very good friend of Schumann. The letters of Schumann to Joachim and vice versa are the most important elements in understanding the mind of Schumann very often. There's one sentence that always hits me. He said to Joachim, "It would be nice to see you so we can sit together and be silent." And this is Schumann. His music grapples with demons and is never wholly at ease, even when the wings bless the darkness with glimpses of light. I mean, this is incredible. I mean, and it's light he's looking for, until he gets into that white light in which he cannot use the themes of Clara anymore. And so what is happening, Brahms arrives there. He's 20 years old.
Yeah.
We're in 1853. He's 20 years old. He meets, and it is love at first sight with Robert Schumann and love at first sight with Clara Schumann, who comes to listen to this young man play his, I think it was the second piano sonata.
Yeah. Now, I love the story where he played. First of all, he arrives the first day that he knocks on the door. Marie, one of the little girls, answers, and the Schumanns aren't there. So he has to come back the next day. And there, Schumann opens the door himself. But what I love is that when Brahms is playing, Schumann says, "Wait, wait, wait!
Really?
Give me no." And Brahms in his
I'm going
head,
to get my pianist.
yes, Brahms in his head, he's thinking, "Oh, this is over.
This is a
This is bad."
catastrophe, yes.
But he runs to call Clara. You have to hear this, and that's it. It's true. It's a coup de foudre. Absolutely, love
It's
at
a
first
good
sight.
fool. Love at first sight. It's a triangular love at first sight.
Yeah, and Clara says, like in both their diaries and letters, they both say the same thing. But Clara says his stuff is very hard to play. So Brahms, even though he played in very odd places and stuff, he writes intricate, complicated music for the piano. So there they are, the three of them.
So Clara and Robert, don't misunderstand us. Clara and Robert are the supreme musical romance of the Romantic period.
Oh yeah,
And she was the love of Robert's life. They have a sexual diary, which is extraordinary, in which they put down everything that is happening between them. It's real stuff. It's real stuff, and she is also his musical champion. I alluded to that. She's the heroic force that held his splintering mind together longer than anyone could have thought.
She knew, eh?
And
she could feel him.
She knew. She kept him together for some. So Robert Schumann will live another 2 years and a bit. So it's an extraordinary story, because Brahms will hang around as long as he can after those first meetings at the end of September and the beginning of October.
Okay.
And he will be there. And then the Schumanns come and visit him in Hanover. And and Schumann is fine. Robert Schumann is fine.
It's one
He's
of
doing
his
well.
Good,
his good periods, yes,
yeah, happy, positive,
and very
energetic.
positive, and then he that is in January when he's in Hanover. And then 3 weeks later, it all starts going. He hears those sounds again. He cleans his office. He puts everything in the right place, because he's going away.
He knows.
And then on the 27th of February, the day of Carnival, in Cologne, in Düsseldorf, he goes to the bridge and throws himself into the Rhine. He tries twice to suicide, because he knew that, in a way, his mind was not up to the syphilis at the 3rd level, which at that moment exploded. He had it since he was 21, by the way, syphilis. They thought he was, everything had been looked after, but, at that time, Schubert died of it, Nietzsche died of it, Wolf died of it. Just name them. I mean, it was not curable at that time.
The thing is that they meet at the end of September. Let's say, so there's October, November, December, January.
Yeah.
So that's 4 months.
4 months, and that's the time he knows him. In Robert Schumann, once he's saved by the fishermen in the Rhine, brought home, he says, "I want to be interned. I want to be interned. It's it. I want to be interned." He knows. He's not mad, but once the brain gets bitten in by the syphilis, then there is a problem.
So at the end, when and it's going to come very soon. So Brahms steps in.
And Brahms steps in. Robert will go to Endenich, an institution along the Rhine, and he will live for another 2 years. He will die in 56.
And Brahms will shelter Clara from
and
seeing.
He will stay for two.
Yes.
He will stay there for 2 years.
There's
The whole
8
time.
children.
There are 7 children, and the 8th was born just after Robert is interned, and Brahms will be there to help. And he lives in the same house. And there are other friends around, but Brahms is there. And Clara will not meet Robert anymore, except for 2 days before he dies. Who takes her? Brahms. And the two of them. It must be an extraordinary meeting. He doesn't. I don't think he recognizes her. Most of the writings about it, and most of he doesn't recognize her, and he mumbles things, and he plays some Bach, and that's it. And Brahms takes her back, and 2 days later it is finished.
There are words about him embracing her, but barely, because his arms, he can't really move his arms that well anymore. So Brahms has shelters
her, and it goes further, because once after his death, and just to get some breathing space for both of them, they travel together. They go to Switzerland. They do it, and there is kissing, there is hugging, but there is not. It doesn't go further. It doesn't go further because of Brahms. It is very clear, because of Brahms. I have picked out of letters 2 or 3 sentences here.
Yes.
Brahms to Clara, and I quote, "I can do nothing but think of you." Isn't that,
I don't know. If somebody writes that to me, it's serious. It's serious.
When I write that to somebody,
you mean it.
I mean it. And then she, an answer, "What have you done to me?" Interesting sentence, isn't it? He, "Can't you remove the spell you have cast over me?"
It's pretty clear.
It is clear.
It's beautiful.
But Brahms has been wounded when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
And that's why I talked about the waterfront. He has been wounded. The girls love this nice little young blonde boy. And his sexual life goes through prostitution. Well, at the end, there's an extraordinary document of Brahms walking in the streets of Vienna, and the prostitutes greeting him and saying, "Guten Morgen, Herr Doctor." Good morning, doctor. I mean, this is, but because everybody was very polite, the politeness, the Austrian politeness is one of the greatest things in the world. But at the same time, what is beyond all that? And so Brahms, that was his way. His relationship with women, and especially with women that were slightly older, were very interesting, which comes in what was his relationship also, that very tender relationship he had with his mother. So all these elements came in. Brahms will never get married. The whole relationship between him and Clara Wieck is like the one of an old couple. They will fight each other from time to time, but musically they were both attuned to each other so much. She will die in 1896. He will die in 1897. Many years after the death of Robert. So this is the kind of background, that is the kind of background. But what does that have to do with the First Symphony?
So the thing is, between Schumann and Brahms, there's a generation, right?
23 years.
So when
that's a generation.
They met, Brahms was 20, Schumann was 43. They had, let's say, 6 months of real talking, contact together. And Clara was 34. Now, Clara is the one who encouraged Robert to write his First Symphony.
Absolutely.
She said, "Your music is now too big for the piano." Brahms, his music had to grow into the symphony, and he worked it that way. That's the only comparison I can make.
I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that. So,
yes.
They get married, Robert and Clara, this incredible romantic couple. They get married in 1840, and in that first year, which is the love year, it's everything is for the best in the best of the worlds. And I went to visit their little apartments in Leipzig, where it's a smallish apartment, and that's where they had their first and I think also their second child, and that's where he composes the First and the Fourth Symphony, because she pushes him by doing and getting into the symphonies. Your piano works sometimes I have so many colors, so good. And what he has to do is to try to get it into the Beethovenian structure. And sometimes it bursts out of the structure, and especially in some of the the first version of the Fourth Symphony. And the Fourth Symphony at the end also is a very, very, it's almost in one movement. There is a theme going throughout the whole symphony, and it bursts all sides if you have a very good conductor doing it. So one needs top-level conductors for Schumann. Because if they side read Schumann, it's all gray. And you need more than 50 shades of gray to get through Schumann. There's so much coloring, there's so much intensity, there is so much, Robert Schumann is feet off the ground. Brahms will be feet on the ground.
Yes, very much.
Very different, and that's the generational one, and it's Brahms also, his character. But Robert Schumann will compose that first symphony, which we call the Spring Symphony. And spring is the beginning of everything. Spring is discovery. It's the rediscovery of your body. It's the your everything. The world is warming up again, and the flowers are there, and happiness, and it goes together. And so that first symphony is one of those running forwards by Robert Schumann. It's a totally positive, optimistic, which he composes the first draft 4 days.
Oh, come on.
4 days. He composes faster than Mozart. And so 4 days. And then he works at it because he didn't like, getting it into the symphonic form. That was more of a problem. Well, more of a problem, 3 weeks. A symphony, a wonderful symphony in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And there you go. And they're flying off.
Just that slow move, the second movement, that's so perfect and delicious. And I can't imagine 3 weeks just on that movement.
Yeah,
it's
done. And then he and it was well conducted at the premiere. And then he gets into his Fourth Symphony, which will be called the Fourth Symphony.
And who conducted the premiere? Some guy named Mendelssohn.
Mendelssohn, of course.
Yeah.
Mendelssohn.
Of course.
And a great conductor. And Mendelssohn understood right away how to do it and what to do it. Mendelssohn, who didn't like at all the Symphonie Fantastique by Berlioz.
Oh, really?
And I'm bringing this in because you have two tendencies that are starting the 19th century. You have one side Franz Liszt and Berlioz, who are exploding the symphony, and you have Brahms and Schumann, who put it back in as much as possible into the Beethoven structure of the symphony.
And then Wagner is there.
And then Wagner, who picks from everybody anyhow. So he steals all over the place. And he pulls it together in a wonderful way. But, if he didn't have his father-in-law, Franz Liszt, I can sing for you the elements that he has stolen in the Faust Symphony, for example, but also in some of the piano sonatas by Franz Liszt that Wagner has.
Let's talk about that one day.
One day
fascinating.
We will talk about that. So here we go. First Symphony, 4 days, 3 weeks, springtime, explosion.
Boom. Okay.
Feet off the ground, but at the same time, he's a poetic writer. He and that poesy is all over that first symphony, which is, if I'm not mistaken, C major symphony, and so positive, very positive.
It's B flat.
Singing.
The B flat.
The Brahms is C minor. That's a B flat.
You're just reminding me of the last movement, which is crazy. It starts so big.
Yes.
Rum, bum, 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 bum. And then that's like a little introduction to the. And then you're at the ballet. Schumann? What's going on? And it's perfect and beautiful. And like I was listening to it with Nézet Séguin. It's like birds. You know, when a flock of birds on the, and then they take off all together.
And you're using birds.
Yes.
It's light-footed,
Absolutely.
if you want to. It's light-footed, but always somewhere behind all that is the unbearable lightness of being.
Oh, yes, Jean-Jacques.
And that comes with, this is not my title, it is Kundera, of course, the Czech writer with a wonderful, wonderful book on the unbearable lightness of being. And you have that in that symphony, through that symphony. And then you have, so many years later, you have Brahms, who will try to compose. Now, what try to compose? How did that start? Well, it starts in 54. It starts in 54. Robert Schumann saying to Brahms what Clara said to Robert Schumann. Why don't you compose a symphony?
Exactly.
Because look, your sonata which you played for us is very symphonic. It's an enormous work. It's big work, and so why don't you compose a symphony? There goes the idea. And I have to say that what very often Clara did to Robert did to Brahms, and he will teach him. He will teach him the old music. Schütz, for example. Schütz is very present in Robert's mind, and he will be Brahms when he writes his German Requiem with his mother in mind, but also with Robert in mind.
Yeah.
Very much with Robert in mind. He will compose, the Schütz comes back. And it's a second level thing. Brahms will never, ever forget Robert Schumann. And when we get to the Fourth Symphony, in the last movement, there is between variations 13 and 16, 17, there are reminiscences. He calls back the Clara theme, Brahms, Clara theme. He calls back the Ferne Geliebte by Beethoven, which was a theme that Robert used to talk to musically to Clara. So Brahms quotes a quote by Robert Schumann, which is a quote for Clara, and it's all there. It's all there in the Fourth Symphony. He's telling it, and people that know music and the musicians, of course, when you get into those very quick variations of the last movement, a very strange last movement, based on a work by Johann Sebastian Bach. So when you have that, at that moment, he's back and saying goodbye to Robert and saying goodbye to Clara. It's also Brahms who will put together a work which was a composition of Clara and Robert. So, at the end, it's all there. All his life, Robert Schumann will be there. Now, the First Symphony, he hears about that from Robert Schumann, 1854. And then 1862, he makes some firsts. And that is 2 years before the German Requiem. So you have, he puts down the first movement, ideas for the first movement, 62. And finally, more than 10 years later, in 74, more than 10 years later, 74, he composes the First Symphony. And that's the time he becomes the Brahms we have on pictures with the big beard and that very solid person.
And probably now 6 feet tall in my mind.
And in that symphony, contrary to the fire of Robert Schumann, contrary to the lightness, that unbearable lightness of being of Robert Schumann, you have balance, you have density, you have a solar system starting to exist, that organic tempo. So all the internal battles of Brahms were kind of kept together thanks to the form, which was Beethoven's form. And that's why they call his first symphony also the 10th Symphony by Beethoven. Notwithstanding the fact, and I've always said that the second and the third movements are very Schumann movements. Except that after the death of Brahms, most conductors made them too heavy. Today, the conductors have heard that, and the Brahms has lightened up. His feet are still wonderfully on the ground, but his interior vehemence, that internal battle, and the vitality, which always goes wonderfully well together with great tenderness. Brahms is, I think, one of the most tender musicians ever around. He, makes the space a very, very wonderful Schumann space, like in the second movement, like in the third movement of the first symphony. And so Schumann will be there throughout his life. He will never leave him, as he doesn't leave Clara. If Schumann in his first symphony there is a kind of organic movement in it, but Brahms's organic tempi are those of a regular heartbeat.
Ah, yes.
And Schumann heart just flutters.
Absolutely. That's very true. Especially here, you're very right, and you have to enjoy. You have to let go to enjoy it. And I think it might be a good place to slow down and stop for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Because you're right, and you alluded to these conductors. You need a conductor that knows how to let go. Also with Schumann. But yeah, I have this Nézet-Séguin in my head now of how it should be, where he just. Here it is, and you have to appreciate this the fluttering.
See, it's an interesting thing. When you listen, and that's from our listeners and the people that are around us, when you listen to Schumann, don't try to construct a meaningful thing. Just let yourself go. But a conductor can't do that. So he has really have to go and have this little element of let go. Yeah. Once he has built everything that Schumann has told. There are much more indications in the scores of Brahms than in the scores of Schumann. So there is much more latitude up to a certain point. So you have to know that Schumann sometimes starts, and it's as if you're jumping on a train that's passing.
Yes.
And you have to let yourself just be taken by him and let him run forward. And if you can get on board, it's the most wonderful present.
Thank you, Jean-Jacques. I think I feel better. I feel better about this. I know that we'll play this with Alexander Shelley, with my orchestra, which is the perfect size, my orchestra, the NAC orchestra, to play Schumann. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to that now that we've studied it a little bit.
And you will be doing the first of Brahms also. Yes. That's why we were talking about those two symphonies.
So, and now, the next time you and I will sit down together, we will talk about Claude Vivier, which is totally something else.
French-Canadian composer, absolutely extraordinary, and according, in my opinion, the most forward-going and the most gifted composer who died far too young.
Yes, so I know you have a personal link to Claude Vivier. not a little bit, I am terrified of the subject. So I'm looking forward to our visit. Thank you so much.
And we'll see each other in Vivier's music.
Thank you.